Welcome to the Project Mom Podcast. I'm your host, Emily Gorey, mom of a sweet baby girl and an ever-evolving entrepreneur. On this show, we will explore the intersection of motherhood and entrepreneurship. We will share stories of moms just like you and me with the goal of fostering community and comfort in knowing that we are not alone in our experiences. Please take a moment to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to ensure you get all the updated episodes and releases. Welcome to today's episode of the Project Mom Podcast. Today's guest is Baily Hancock, a mom to two young children, 3-year-old Archie and 1-year-old Penny, and a passionate collaborator, connector, and catalyst for community engagement and growth. She's built her love of community and collaboration through her entrepreneurial journey and has now brought that passion back in-house for Mighty Networks. Baily is also the recovering overachiever behind the Ambition Recovery Club, which is a community for burnt-out overachievers looking to unlearn what we've been taught and learned about productivity and worthiness, and how to reprogram our definitions of success and achievement. So Baily, welcome.
Hi, Emily. Thank you for having me.
You are so welcome. I'm so excited. I am very, very excited because I'm hopeful we're going to look at your story through a slightly different lens. You had sent me a podcast that you had done on the next podcast, kind of as we were exploring if this could be a good fit. And a lot of what you shared on that episode talked about your, recent journey from entrepreneur to employee and this evolution of ambition recovery. And with that interview, you touch on just pieces of motherhood throughout that journey. And I'm hopeful that we will talk more about the motherhood piece today and how that ebb and flow, that progression of your career came to be, but kind of how your priority shifts, those changes in needs and desires from motherhood kind of impacted that career change. So I'm super, super excited. So with that, let's talk about your motherhood journey. Give us a little bit of background into what that looked like, and then where did your career fit into your motherhood timeline?
I first started the process of becoming a mother in, I think, 2018. I got pregnant in the beginning of 2018 and then actually had a miscarriage a couple of weeks later. I was, I think, supposed to be 11 weeks along, found out at that point that the baby had not continued to grow, and obviously was devastated because when you're actually trying to have a baby and then it doesn't happen, it's heartbreaking. And that was a big turning point for me, not only in my life, but my business. I had been running my own business for about 1.5 years at that point and was, trucking right along. I was doing the thing that a lot of entrepreneurs do, which is saying yes to everything because you never know where your next client's going to come from, when you're going to get paid again. So I was taking on a lot of work, and it wasn't necessarily all aligned work. I was diversifying my attention and my time between sort of two businesses. I had started out my business I was calling myself a career happiness strategist. So it wasn't quite career coaching. It was more teaching workshops on how to figure out your best next career move. Simultaneously, I was also doing collaboration consulting because my background had been in partnerships and marketing and collaborations and growth and things like that. So I was sort of doing that to pay the bills while pursuing this career happiness strategist path because that's what I wanted to do. So I was doing these two businesses. There was a third business that had popped up for a brief moment. So I was a little bit scattered. And then when the miscarriage happened, I had to cancel 10 speaking gigs in a matter of 2 weeks. That it was just terrible timing. I had all these things lined up and I had to just cancel them because obvious reasons. I had to take care of myself and my body and my mind and my heart. And I found that when I did that, it wasn't a big deal. I had been putting so much pressure on myself to say yes to everything and to just do the most because of that, scarcity mindset as an entrepreneur. And when I had to cancel and postpone everything, first of all, what I learned very quickly was that I had a community full of amazing human beings, primarily women, who not only were understanding, they sent me gift cards for food. They sent flowers. They really came and took care of me, which I did not expect and was totally blown away by. And so not only did I automatically realized that what I was doing was not as important as I was thinking it was prior to this. It was a great perspective shift, and it helped show me who in my network were my actual people versus just people in my network, right? So when I came out of that, that was the summer of 2018. I had no desire to get pregnant again right away. I needed some time to heal, and I was a little bit traumatized by it. And I really, in that moment, got very clear on what I didn't want to do with my work, because suddenly I was very aware of my priorities in life and what actually mattered. And I ended up having the best year in business after that because of that clarity and that reprioritization of my work and my life. And I ended up getting pregnant again at the end of that year and had my first son, Archie, in July of 2019. And my business definitely shifted significantly from there, which we can talk about. But going into motherhood, I think I just was under the impression that oh yeah, you decide to have a baby and then you have a baby, the end. And very clearly now I know that is not the case for almost anybody. It's almost never that straightforward. So yeah, that was a big turning point in my life and my work and my career and my business and my heart and my family and my friends and community. Everything changed for the better from that point on.
I love that. I think something that's so impactful that is really resonating with me that you just said was this almost surprised awareness that you had that there are actually people out there who want to be there for you. That's a big one for a lot of people, right? Being able to allow ourselves to be vulnerable enough to allow the people who are in our network, who are on our side, to actually show up for us. And I think sometimes we have to go through these challenging or perceived unfortunate situations to become aware of really the support system that we do have behind us, which is quite remarkable, right? When you think about it that way.
Yeah, especially for strong women who are used to getting shit done, which I definitely was in that category. And I found that it was the first time that I had to accept help because I just didn't have the emotional capacity to deal with things. And having to cancel on people obviously touched on my people pleasing nature and my ambition and things like that. And to see that it wasn't a problem, that people were yeah, of course, take your time. Let us know when you want to reschedule. No big deal. It was just such an important moment for me to realize that people cared about me as a human, not as, a business partner or a customer or a client or, a consultant. And it was then when I really realized I am surrounded by some wonderful human beings who have my back fully, that I know now I can go forward trusting that they're there for me when I need them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that translates so nicely to the work that you do, right? The community and the collaboration piece to every business, because behind these businesses are humans, are individuals. The community that these businesses are building are made up of individuals.
There's no community without people.
Yeah.
It's just not a thing.
Yeah. It's quite remarkable when you think about that. And I could probably go on a tangent right now, and I will do my best not to. But when I think about even my own personal experiences in the business world, in the corporate world, I worked in sales for a long time in advertising. And it was very much this transaction-based approach. And there was always concern about canceling meetings or, shoot, if I lost this opportunity, I lose the opportunity. So I need to sacrifice everything else I have going on to make sure I can be there. And really, we are just humans at the end of the day. And so is the person on the other end of that phone call or that computer or that email. So it really is quite beautiful in every aspect of our lives. So I want to touch a little bit on that. So when you're at work right now, what are the pillars of how you support your clients with community and collaboration at Mighty Networks? And then I'd love to talk a little bit about it in terms of how you bring it back to the home front.
I mean, everything I do has community and collaboration at the core. And what's interesting about that transitional point in my life was I cut away the career stuff once that happened, and I went all in on collaboration. And to be honest, it probably had a lot to do in the background with how supported I felt by my own community and how much I then realized oh, this is even bigger than I thought. And honestly, what most people want in this life is connection. They want to feel seen. They want to feel like they can resonate with somebody else's experience, and they want to feel less alone. And community is the answer to that. And it has to be intentional. It can't just be thrown together. The big purpose really needs to be solidified so that you're not just throwing out content and hoping people click and like and comment. It's like, oh, no, it's so much deeper than that. So the way I support the hosts that I work with at Mighty Networks is helping them see what that big picture is and like, why are you doing this? What is the point? What are you actually hoping to achieve? And it's never about revenue. It's never about monetizing their content. That's definitely goals that they have within it, but it's about bringing people together around a common reason, whether that's transformation together, going from here to there, it's commiseration, it's understanding a bigger concept together. It's about bringing people together under a common theme. So it's really important for me to help my hosts to understand, like, what is your big picture goal, not only for the community, but your business at large? We talk a lot about the business ecosystem and how the community fits into that ecosystem. You know, is the goal of the community to bring in potential customers for your business? If that's the case, then okay, we need to sort of look at things a little differently. Is it to have a place for your existing audience, people that are on your email list or your social channels, to come together and learn from each other? Like, what are we doing here at the end of the day? And keeping that goal front and center so that you don't lose focus and get wrapped up in, you know, who's joining and who's leaving and clicks and content and things like that. Those are just little micro actions that you have to deal with day to day, but you really have to stay focused on the big picture why.
Yeah, I love that. I think when you look at things from a business perspective, right, there's a lot of noise that comes from those minute things that you have to, yes, perhaps take a look at why are some of those things happening, but then circling back to figure out what is my ultimate hope and desire for this community that I've built. And I think when you have a mindset like that, it really can be applied to anything, right? If you think about our lives at home, in this home that we're building, like, what do we want to achieve in this house, right? How do we want our kids to feel? How do we want people who come into our home to feel? And how do we generate a life that allows us to live that way? So how do you bring this love of community and growth and collaboration with other people into your home life when it comes to your kids and building a life that you are ultimately aligned with?
It's a lot of that big picture thinking too. I mean, I think I'm a strategist by nature, so I like to see what the end game is going to be. How can we get there? And for my home life, it's always been very important for me for home to feel safe and cozy and comfortable and warm. And it is so easy to lose sight of the big picture when you're a parent, because the micro things are your days, right? Like, these are the longest days and the shortest years. And it's very easy to get lost in the chaos of laundry and feeding kids and bedtime routines and naps and things like that. But when you think about it from that big picture place, you can have a more clear view of what are the things we need to do every day to ultimately build to this bigger life. And I want my children to grow up and look back on their childhood and be able to point out, like, the routines that were maybe special, like the rituals we have as family, or, you know, the vacations we always went on, or the micro moments like in the backyard playing before bedtime. And, you know, it's those things. And it's really easy, specifically as a working mom, to get very frustrated when your toddler, you know, doesn't want to put on his damn shoes when you're in the parking lot at preschool and he takes them off after you struggled to get them on. And you just sort of want to like shake the shit out of your child. And you're like, wait, I will look back fondly on these moments. Not today, probably not next week, but in an eventual future, these are the moments that I'm going to smile at and be like, oh, you were such a pain in the butt when you were 3. Oh my God, listen to what you used to do. You know, so having that macro perspective, I think, helps make the hard little moments feel more doable. And it keeps you from getting mired in the chores and the to-dos and the details. And instead it's like, oh, this is a really sweet moment. Let's just live in this moment for a minute. And in terms of the community piece, it's obviously been very hard to have what I would have normally, I think, had as a community for our family because my child was born towards the end of 2019. And obviously we went into the pandemic right after that, and we are still in it in some capacity. So now that things have started to shift again societally, my kids are attending music classes and they're going to little play dates and they go to preschool and they have friends that they meet up at the park with and they see their grandparents a lot. And we have a good friend system, a good community amongst all of our friends here in LA. And we try and make sure there's lots of opportunities for our kids to be around lots of different people, because that's how you learn about yourself too, is through other people and your interactions with other people. So it's really important for me to make sure that they are part of various diverse communities, you know, whether it's through activities or school or sports, so that they can understand like, this is the way the world operates, and being able to connect with other people, other kids, adults, people of different ages, different races, like that's how you be a good human. So to me, being engaged in a community is part of learning about yourself and how you fit into the world. And it just helps solidify those skills from an early age. So it's so important.
Yeah, I love that. I think when you touched on, you know, being able to have this like larger picture, you learn a lot of what you want and what you don't want through experiences. And perhaps it's from your childhood, right? What you learned, you know, through what you experienced in your own childhood, what you wish you could have had, or reflecting on perhaps I would choose to do that a little bit differently this go around. What advice do you have for parents who aren't quite clear on what it is that they want, but they know that they're struggling in that day to day, these little nuanced pieces of nap times and sleep routines, and am I getting out the door on time, or I'm constantly late to daycare drop off because I just can't seem to get my kid in the car seat moments? You know, what advice do you have for the parents that are really in it right now? And how do we take a step back and see that larger picture?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really in it right now too. So I'm by
We're very
no
much in
means.
it.
Yeah, we are in it. And
Yeah.
I wish I could say that I always have clarity on that big picture, but I don't. This morning, you know, I'm still having to put a mask on my almost 3-year-old, and he's over it. And I'm like, dude, I am also over it. I get it. Unfortunately, this is the way of the world right now. We need to just do it. And anybody that has a toddler knows, like, there's no rationality there. There's no reasoning with them. You have to bribe the hell out of them in order to get what you want. Octonauts has really just been my go-to bribe for a while now. And thank God for those cute little creatures. But it's like with any part of your life, you have to have space to think and to reflect. And if you're expecting yourself to somehow keep the big picture in sight without any room to do that, good luck. You can't. It's not a thing. So one of the most important things for me is making sure there is time in my life, at least weekly, where I'm alone with my thoughts. For me, it's always like a coffee shop or a cozy table with like tea and, you know, whatever. Like I have to sort of set the scene for myself to be able to remove my emotional armor that, especially as parents, we have in this world that we live in. It's really hard to shed the armor, the barriers, the walls that we have to put up to just keep going every day. I mean, there's a new horror that happens every 5 seconds, and it's kind of like a shedding. So I have to have room in my life where I can like let that stuff drop and remember who I am inside and listen to that voice, that instinct and intuition, and be able to stop and say, you know, what is important to me when I'm on my deathbed? What are the pieces that I hope came together for me? And the adage of like, the way you spend your days is the way you spend your life, that's always stuck with me, because I think a lot of us have a tendency to place goals really far out and think, oh yes, this is the kind of life I want to live. But then you're not really sitting down and being intentional about how you're going to get there. And like every day,
Or enjoying the process.
yeah, you totally miss
there.
the present. And the present is literally the only thing we have. And so I think having that breathing room to do reflection and just being quiet. I mean, God, we can't overstate the importance of quiet time enough as a mother, especially because our minds never stop running with the to-dos and the don't forgets and the, oh crap, I have to do this. And like, oh, right, this thing was supposed to be done last week and I still haven't made the appointment. And So I think if you can set all of that down, even for 20 minutes, and be able to say, yes, yes, I will get to you thoughts. Give me a second to be with just me. Then it gives you that room to really identify what is important to you. And you can think, is the me of today the me that's going to get me to that place I ultimately want to be? And if the answer is no, which it often is for me, you have to think, okay, what's one small thing I can do to get to that place, to be that person that I think I want to be? And that includes as a mother, a woman, a friend, a wife, a sister, a daughter, all of those things. And so it's important to just get quiet as much as you can, as crazy as that sounds, when my world is very often quite loud.
Yeah. And it comes back to that self-prioritization of being able to say that to yourself of like, okay, it is for the good of myself, for my partner, my children, my community around me. If I take these even 5 minutes to sit here and do some breathing, quiet my brain, let go of the to-do list and the pressure for just right now, knowing you can pick it right back up once your toddler starts screaming again, because Lord knows it will happen, right? It'll always be there for you. So it comes back to, can we give ourselves permission to allow ourselves to just be quiet for a few minutes and take away the guilt and the pressure that we always have to be doing something? And I want to touch on a piece. So I think it was in your podcast episode that I had listened to, you had mentioned this desire at the time that your son was born to really set a maternity leave, to set that time for yourself to be present with him and bond with him and be there for him without this pressure of having to worry about your business. How did that setup look like for you? I mean, what were some of your thoughts around setting up maternity leave? Did it happen the way that you expected it to? And kind of take us through that process. How did you prioritize yourself and set yourself up for success, or would you do it differently?
I would definitely do it differently, only because I loved being an entrepreneur and I loved running my own business. I would not give that back for anything. I regret the timing of it. I do regret not having babies while working for a company that would have paid me maternity leave. Like, my bad, and now that I'm back in, I'm like, oh my gosh, what a dummy. Like, I just left so much money on the table and all of this stress I could have relieved from myself. But, things worked out the way that they did. And when I was about to have Archie, all of my business was time-based. So I didn't have any retainer clients that I had to deal with putting on pause or anything like that. So it worked out in that I stopped taking clients X number of weeks before I knew that I was going to have him. So I wrapped up all of my project-based work like 3 weeks before my due date. And he ended up coming like 2 weeks early. So it was great timing. And then I knew that I wasn't going to pick anything back up for at least 3 months. And, the timing of the year, he was born at the end of July. And so when I like, quote unquote, went back to work or was starting to think about drumming up business again, it was, October, November, kind of a tricky time of the year to start things up. I was like, okay, no big deal. I'll just kind of ease back in. And then beginning of 2020 came and I was like, here we go. And then clearly we did not go. So no way I could have known that.
Screeching halt.
Yeah. February was a great month, 2020. And then March happened and everything ended. So with my daughter, with Penny, 2 years later, I did the same thing, but I had a little bit of like recurring revenue coming in from different things, but not enough in retrospect. Like I wish I would have done a better job of having some background, passive income coming in from various things, whether it was courses or my membership. I ended up launching a membership on Mighty Networks in October of 2020. So well after she was born, but the intention was to get that up and running before. But as anybody with 2 kids knows, when you're pregnant and you have an existing child, everything is very hard. So it was like, okay, I did my best. And that's really at the end of the day, the truth of the whole matter is I did my best. And I am in no way regretful of turning off my business for those months to be able to fully be present with my kids. And I was very protective of that time. I didn't say yes to anything. I had an out of office on. Everybody on social, my newsletter, everybody knew that I was not reachable. And so when it was time for like the 3-4 months to come up to start, getting back into things, I tried to turn on the faucet as much as possible, but for various reasons on both ends, it was a really tricky restart. And having Penny last year was sort of the kickoff to me realizing that I just didn't have the energy and capacity anymore to run my own business and have 2 kids under 2. It was just way too much. And it no longer was serving the purpose it served when I first went out on my own, which was giving me freedom and flexibility and autonomy of schedule. It suddenly was like more constricting and oppressive than, freedom giving. So I had to really shift my priorities yet again.
I mean, it's very true. I think there's this romanticized version of what entrepreneurship is, right? There's like, and what it will offer us, right? This freedom, this flexibility, but you really hit on it. I mean, when you think about running your own business, you wear every hat, right? You don't have marketing. You don't have IT. You don't have sales. You have yourself who wears all of those hats. And when you're trying to drum up the business or you have to create some sort of collateral for a client, right? You play all of those pieces. So yeah, there really is this like romanticized version that it gives you freedom and flexibility. But I find, right, you're probably working longer hours and more hours. And if you perhaps gave yourself a little bit of a support team by choosing to perhaps go back in-house and taking some of that pressure off. And I realize it does sit differently for everybody in the type of, entrepreneurial journey that you're working for. And it's important to recognize what works for you and what doesn't in that moment.
100%. That's all it is what are my current priorities in life? Where do I want to give my energy? And what feels good anymore? And I used to love working till like 10 o'clock at night on my business and all day Sunday. I loved it. It didn't feel bad at all. It was like, why wouldn't I? I don't get people that don't want to do this. Like I love having that space to create something that doesn't exist yet and see it through and all of that and help people. But when I had my kids, those feelings shifted towards them. And I was no longer getting the satisfaction and the purpose from my business that I once had because that was coming from humans now. And I had enough smart women in my life tell me how short this phase is with your kids that really like the time before they go to elementary school zips by in a flash. And it does not feel like it's going to zip by in a flash when you're in it. But I've seen it happen enough to other people in my life to know that it is true. And in the grand scheme of things, I had to realize that my career was most likely going to span 40 plus years. Who knows if I'm even going to retire ever? I don't know if that'll be an option for us. So it's one of those things where I was like, okay, one of these things is going to be across the majority of my life. The other is for a blip. And it took me a long time to realize that my career didn't need to be top billing anymore. Like in this moment, my career would be there for me when I was ready. And it's not that I even stopped working. It's just, it wasn't the main focus anymore. And so it got to go on the back burner a little bit while my kids and family are on the front burner. And I'm incredibly fortunate to have a really supportive partner in my husband. And with my business, I had a lot of runway that I wouldn't have had if I was on my own or single. And so that was a great privilege that I had when I was running my business. But then with 2 kids, your overhead gets a lot bigger too. So ironically, when I started my business, it was with the intention of having flexibility and freedom so that when we had kids, it would be able to fit in with that. What ended up happening was it didn't afford me the freedom and flexibility because, to your point, I was wearing every hat and I didn't have enough heads for all the hats. And so what also ended up happening, which was a lovely byproduct of this horrible pandemic, is most companies now are remote to some extent. And so the reasons I went out on my own because I couldn't get those things from working for somebody are now the things I can get from working from somebody. The flexibility of schedule, the remote work, the option to like make your work fit into your life as opposed to the other way around wasn't a thing, 7 years ago when I went out on my own. And so I think the most important lesson I've taken away from this transition is that the variables will continue to change. And what doesn't change is your ability to decide what you want in that moment. And you need to constantly, at least yearly, be checking in with yourself to ask, is this still working for me? Is this still the way I want my life to look and feel? And when I finally came to that place of, I don't want this anymore. I want more focus on my kids and less stress about work. I want a steady paycheck. I want benefits. I want a job that I don't have to pour my whole identity into anymore. And that's what I was lucky to find at Mighty Networks. And I'm so grateful because this could not be a better fit for me, especially at this phase of my life. And I can always go back. I can always do my own thing again. That's the beauty of entrepreneurship. You are not stuck ever. You couldn't be stuck if you tried. Nothing's forever good or bad. So as long as you keep that front and center, everything's doable.
It really is remarkable when you think about it like that, because as you're speaking, one thing is coming to mind. It's like, you can always change your mind. You can always make a different choice. And there's really something to be said for taking stock right now of what it is that you want. What are you fulfilled by? Is this working for you? And just recognizing that it's completely safe to make a different choice. We're not stuck in this need to, well, I started this business. I have to give it my all because it must mean something if I don't. Bullshit. We don't have to do that anymore. It's not,
we get to decide what something means to us.
Absolutely. And there's all these different variables that are constantly changing that could give us what we were looking for now that perhaps couldn't give it to us even a year or 2 or 3 or 7 before.
You have no way to predict the future. If the last couple of years have shown us anything, it's that.
Yeah.
So just be flexible, be adaptable, be nimble, be willing to change as you change and as your situation changes. It's when we get too rigid that we break. But if you can be flexible, you can roll with the punches. Nothing's going to throw you off your game. When Archie was born, he had to go to the NICU for a week because he had fluid in his lungs. And obviously it was a horribly exhausting and emotionally trying week. However, I realized that I had no expectations about my labor and delivery and what those first couple weeks were going to look like. I was completely open to whatever was going to happen. And I think because of that, I wasn't totally broken when things didn't go according to a plan I didn't have, And so that was such a great first parenting lesson of see, if you can just relax into situations and let it be as it will be. It's our expectations that color all of our experiences. So if you can have adaptable expectations and go into something knowing how you want to feel as opposed to what you want to happen, you can control how you feel. You cannot control what happens.
Yeah, I love that. I think too, right? There's this piece where it's a little hard for some of us and for me too, for a while to kind of reconcile these two identities. This part of me that wanted to be a working woman, right? I have personal desires, personal needs that I didn't actually know fully existed until I became a mom, right? There was this really challenging period for me to kind of reconcile the fact that I was this full-time mom now who is completely relied on by a tiny little human being to survive, to be comforted, to thrive, that I felt that I could not also thrive for a long time. And I think there's this piece of that you mentioned, to be flexible, to be adaptable, to recognize that it's okay to put your family on the front burner, to be there for them, but still have an identity outside of that. And there's, for a lot of us, for me in particular, so I'm going to make that blanket assumption that it does affect others, that there's a really loud narrative that you can't do both, or how do we do both, or I'm selfish for doing both. And this is just a really great reminder that just because your family is on the front burner or a big part of your life right now doesn't mean you can't find other things to prioritize yourself and give you those moments of clarity and rest and recharge, and make a different decision if it's not working the way that you expected it to.
Exactly. You can always change your mind. And frankly, I think we're fed a narrative that tells us if we're not working, we're not of value to society. People, obviously, this country undervalues mothers a lot. And mothers undervalue mothers. Even we do it to ourselves. We beat ourselves up if we're not spending enough time with our kids, or if we're not still nurturing our career, or we're not, all of these things. If we don't have a hobby, I know so many women that beat themselves up for not having hobbies. And I'm like, you are still one person. There is only so much energy you have to give every day. Like, I would love to be taking pottery classes right now. I do not have time. I don't even have time to read a book with my eyeballs. I listen to all of my books because I can do that while multitasking. And I think a lot of it comes down to acceptance and identification of what your needs and your wants and your priorities are, not what society tells you they should be. And frankly, anybody that's had a kid and raised a kid or multiple kids knows that, my God, there is no better training for life than parenthood. I am so much of a better employee because of motherhood. I can handle maybe obstinate adults that are acting like toddlers because I have toddler experience now. And it's also harder for me to get wound up over work things because I do have those priorities in place now. And I have very good boundaries with this job. For the first time in my career, I have excellent work boundaries. And it's because I don't have a choice. It's because I have to give what I have to give to my family. And I want to give that amount of me. I don't want to be, working till 10 o'clock at night after putting them down so that I never have downtime. And then I'm just a burned out shell of a human for everybody. Like, the oxygen mask first thing is an overused analogy, but it's so true that, like, you can't help anybody if you are broken and without oxygen. Like, you have to take care of yourself first, even if it is in those small moments, and just keeping focus on the fact that your career, if and when you pick it back up, will be ready for you. And people have a very short attention span anymore. So if you take 10 years off and come back, nobody's going to be like, yeah, but who are you? What are you again? You just spin it back up again. You just get that momentum again. And before you know it, that's what people know you as once again. So I say these things because these are the conversations I had with myself and with friends for a long time, until I was able to release my expectations for myself that turns out were from other people that probably don't even remember placing those expectations on me as a child or teenager or college student. So again, it's just being able to come back to yourself and ask yourself, what is it that I actually want and need? What kind of person do I want to be today? And how can I make my life such that it gets me there?
Yeah. It's interesting because it's so true. I keep reminding myself that every decision I make is for a life that I'm living. No one else is living it. I really shouldn't care. I mean, I still do. I'm working on that, right? But all these expectations that come from society, parents through our childhood, experiences we had through early parts of our career, school, things like that, right? Do ultimately, whether we recognize it or not, create this influence for us. And I keep doing my darnest to remind myself that every choice I make should be because I want to do it. And if it's not, I can change my mind. So I want to touch on a little bit to see what advice you might have. So I think when we become, right, there's this really alarming narrative that if we are a stay-at-home mom and we choose to be one for a certain number of years and we're like, okay, this just isn't it for me anymore, I'm worried I'm irrelevant at this point, going back into the workforce or building up a business. I mean, what advice do you have for those women? Because you touched on it briefly. I mean, the experience that we get as moms handling irrational human beings is quite remarkable, right? To then catapult us into probably any situation we might come across in a business. So what advice do you have for those women who are just perhaps a little bit hesitant at this point to jump themselves back in because they don't see their worth?
I think it's really important to acknowledge what you do, what all you do on a day-to-day basis. My husband and I joke that I'm the CEO of the house. He's the CFO. We take turns being COO. But like, what we do as parents and mothers especially is incredibly challenging. And it's incredibly fulfilling, but it is really hard. And it requires a lot of different skill sets that we might not have yet. And so there is no such thing as a perfect parent because everybody has weaknesses somewhere that they're being forced to acknowledge and deal with. And so, because to your point, we're keeping tiny people alive, like, there's room for error, but you've got to figure it out. And so What was interesting about my interview process when I was starting to look for a job was I had to both combine my experience as an entrepreneur and communicating everything was that I did and how that relates to these jobs, as well as everything I've been doing as a mom in the last 2 years. And being able to look at it written down on paper made me feel very empowered and very confident, because suddenly I was like, oh my God, I'm actually a way better potential employee than I was last time I was, working for a company. And it kind of catapulted me to a new level, even within my career. And I felt like I was actually able to apply for jobs that were beyond what I could have applied for before being a parent and working for myself. So I think sometimes it can be really helpful to even just like write down all the things you manage and look at that list and think, what of these skills translates to the type of job I want to have or the type of role I might look for? And on the flip side, if you look at roles that you're interested in and you're reading through the bullet points, just replace, company with home life and think, okay, do I have good communication skills? Do I have good project management skills? Do I know how to pull things off with a short turnaround time and no budget? Yes, yes, and yes. So, I think a lot of it comes down to being able to effectively communicate to whoever you're interviewing with at that point how this work translates to paid work, because by no means does this work not count. My God, this work counts. And I think we're lucky that there is starting to be more of a focus on hiring mothers and acknowledging and being cool with whatever career pause women take to raise children and do that thing. Like, there's no break involved in that. There is no, it is the hardest work you can do for the least amount of recognition and reward. And so I think mothers are more qualified than anybody. And as long as you can look at what it is that you do, translate that and be able to communicate that translation, you're great. You're great. You're better off than you were before.
Yeah. It's funny because as you're speaking, it's coming to my mind of like, can we be our own biggest advocate? Right? No one else is going to show up for us, right? And say, oh yeah, I see how that translates. We really do have to be our own biggest cheerleader and remind ourselves just how effing powerful we are, right? And all that we do. I mean, I think about it, I have a million tabs open in my brain at all times. And not to pat myself on the shoulder too much, but I feel like 90% of those get completed.
Hell yeah.
It's quite miraculous.
That's a great success rate,
Yeah, right.
That's a really great success rate. I would give you 100% on your employee report card for that.
Why, thank you. Yes.
You're welcome. Promoted.
Check. Nailed it. But it's interesting because when we put ourselves back in that situation, we feel so vulnerable to toot our own horn, to put ourselves out there. And ultimately that comes, back to kind of the expectation of females and the role that we're supposed to play. But we really do need to be our loudest advocate and remind ourselves that everything that we do has a place in where we want to go. And why not? No one else is going to do it. I mean, I would say it's funny. My husband is probably my biggest supporter. He is sometimes even louder than I am for me, which is wonderful. But I do have to remind myself that I also have to be that.
Yes.
And remind myself that I can do this.
Humility is lovely, but it's not going to get you a job, and it's not going to win you awards, and it's not going to get you attention. I want to call out 2 books that I think are really important. The first is written by my friend, Tony Purry. She wrote a book called My Hype Book, and it essentially allows you to be your own hype woman. And it's a lot of guided prompts for you to fill out that ask you, like, talk about a time when you overcame a huge challenge that you're really proud of. Talk about all these wins. Talk about a terrible moment in your life and how you moved through it. So it's just a physical reminder of how badass you are, because it's very easy to forget. And then another book is called Brag Better, and it teaches you how to brag about yourself. And women are so terrible at bragging about ourselves and our accomplishments. And it's not our fault. It's the way the world has conditioned us to be, but we can change that. And I think of it whenever I would work with my clients who were fearful of calling themselves an expert in something and putting themselves out there as a thought leader. I would remind them that to hide their expertise and their experience is to deny the world the ability to learn from them and to receive from them their wisdom. So, if I had to turn it around like that and say, you're being selfish by not sharing your gifts with the world. You're being selfish by not telling people how great you are so that they can benefit from your greatness. Nobody likes to feel selfish. So it was a very quick reframe for people. They'd be like, oh, no, I'm not selfish. And I'm like, I know that, but you have to tell people you exist and everything wonderful about you so that they can benefit from that. Don't you want people to benefit from your wisdom? And the answer is always, yes, of course. I just want to help people. Cool. Guess what you have to do? Promote yourself. You have to talk about your achievements and your highlights and your wonderful benefits of, your experience and your expertise. And so I think that's important for us to keep front and center.
Yeah. And there's also this piece where our worth equals our productivity. And it's coming to mind because it's like, there's a huge challenge of like putting ourselves out there because can we make this large impact or does
scale it?
Yeah. Can I scale it? Does my expertise, which we absolutely all bring to the table. I mean, our own experiences are unique to us, and that brings such a impactful lens to every situation that we encounter. But I think there's also this fear of like, but is it enough? Can I scale it enough? Is it impactful enough? Is it large enough for it to be worth it? Or do I put myself out there and make myself vulnerable to help 2 people, 10 people, 1,000 people? Yeah, you should. But there is that narrative. And I think for me with this podcast, it was like, I did my best to remind myself of if this helps one person beyond myself, because this was a project that I created strictly for me. If the additional benefit was helping other women, but this was for me to find community and comfort with other people and create it in a way that I could share it. Then if I just helped one other person, then it would be great. And I have heard from dozens of women who I know, and also kind of 1, 2, 3 steps removed for me that this was helpful, that this was impactful. And I've done my job, my mission.
Congratulations. You've achieved your goal. Everything else is just icing, right? I mean, I want to go back to your point about worthiness being tied to productivity. That's the whole unlearning that I've been doing for the last couple of years. It has been a very aggressive lesson in my life that I've had to just succumb to. That's where the Ambition Recovery Club came from. That was me stopping and going, okay, hold on. What if I was valuable just because I was here without doing anything, without earning it, without achieving, without producing, without any of that stuff? And that was a huge wake-up call because I am 100% that like overly ambitious millennial type that wants to achieve and succeed and be on the under 30 list. I missed that. I'm not going to get under 40 probably either. And I just have to be okay with that. And, I was talking to my coach about it and he was saying like, look, everybody's special and nobody's special. And that's something I've had to come to terms with, that I think a lot of us grew up feeling like we had to change the world and we had to be the best and we had to achieve and we had to have this career and we had to succeed because we can do anything, which is a little overwhelming for a child to think. And I carried that my whole adult life. And now that I've come to a place where I'm like, I'm tired. I'm burned out. I don't feel like all this effort has really yielded the results I thought it was going to yield. So I'm going to pause for a second and reassess and re-acknowledge my beliefs about productivity and value and worth and ambition and all of those things and success. My God, like the whole point is to define what success is for you and then live it. And the beautiful thing about that is everybody's individual definition of success is different. And it should be, because we're all unique, special, non-special people. And so with the Ambition Recovery Club, that came to be because I was doing all of these deep dives and going down rabbit holes, learning about dissecting and dismantling my belief systems from what society told me was important and capitalism and the patriarchy and all of that stuff that's so integrated in who we are as human beings. It's really hard to separate it out. I've been thinking of all of these different concepts as, most of us have a drawer where there's a tangled mess of necklaces that you're like, I will get to this. Maybe you took them all on vacation. They got all tangled up with each other. They're a knot. You're like, I know I can take a safety pin to these and like get them separated, but it's going to take some time. That's how I feel about all of these belief systems I have around, toxic ambition and all of these things. So I'm slowly but surely trying to untangle the various threads and see what of them are mine and what were given to me that I don't even want to keep anymore. And it's a long process. And the Ambition Recovery Club's purpose is to have a place where I can put all the resources I'm finding and then learn from other people and find out what's working for them. And, acknowledging that what you're doing isn't working for you anymore is step one. Then you have to figure out how to change it. And change is the hard part. I know that what I was doing wasn't working, but figuring out what to do instead is very unknown. So everything's sort of a work in progress and an experiment. And I personally wanted to do that with other people because I learn best when teaching and learning from others. So that's where that came from. So you are certainly not alone in those feelings.
I love that you created a program to kind of walk alongside others as you yourself are going through it, because I think there's a lot of resistance. I particularly experience this too when I, see, for lack of a better word, experts out there, promoting their business. And it's a lot of, I don't want to say preaching, but it's like teaching from experience. And I think a lot of it is we're also learning as we go, and to recognize that there's no end in sight and that this is a process that's
there's
going
no
to
graduation date.
Yeah, it's going to take you time. I think I would be a little remiss to think I know it all right now.
Oh, none of us know anything.
Sad. I love learning.
I think the older I get, the more I realize I don't know anything. And I'm open to all possibilities because I've been wrong so many times that I'm like, okay, well, cool. That goes back to that flexibility thing and the adaptability thing of being able to revisit your truths and make sure that they're still true for you, because truth is objective. And we get to decide what things mean and what value we place on things. But again, you have to have time in your life to be able to sit there and take a peek at those things. If you're constantly barely staying above water, you're not going to be able to dive deep and, unsurface a lot of the underlying belief systems that really drive all of our decisions.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about the structure of this club and community that you've created? Because I think really there's probably some of us listening that are feeling a little overwhelmed with, how do I even start this process? Like, I'm not happy the way that these things are sitting, but I also don't feel I have the time or the energy to commit to
another
really the
thing.
Process. Yeah, the other thing. And honestly, something that feels like a really tall mountain to climb.
It does.
So what does the structure of this community look like? How do you support the people that are going through this process?
It's interesting because I'm hosting this community on Mighty Networks, the company that I work for. And as a community strategist for my hosts, a lot of what I do is help them think about engaging with their members and creating content that's of value and having a monthly theme and an annual plan and things like that. With the Ambition Recovery Club, my intention is to give people a place to come and rest and feel seen and share small wins. So right now, the club is in its infancy. We're still, welcoming founding members. So it's in the early stages where I'm still figuring out what is the right way to even go about this community, because the traditional ways of running a community, which is like, do polls and questions, post content that people can comment on and share and like, and it's very actionable. And I want this space to feel like a respite. I want this place to feel like a place people can go when they're like, I've got a minute. I would love to read an article on how to put boundaries up for different parts of my life. Like, I don't even know where to begin with that. So right now it's kind of a resource hub where I'm sharing lots of the content that I'm finding valuable. We share a lot of books that we're reading. We share small wins. Like, one of our members, Paige, posted in there that she put up an out of office for the very first time in her entrepreneurial career to go to Yosemite. And side note was she was not going to have service anyway, but whatever. We're like, we'll take it. That counts as a win. This counts as a win.
Yep.
You put up a boundary, right? And out of office. I posted when I had a realization that, my husband was going to be studying for his CFP exam and I was going to have nights and, weekends free to myself because he was going to be busy studying. And I was planning all of these things I was going to do to fill that time and online courses I was going to take and exercise I was going to do and books I was going to read and all this. And then I was like, wait, or I could just do none of that and rest in the evenings. What a concept. And so a lot of us go in there and we're like, guys, listen to what I just realized. Or, oh my gosh, I did this thing. Yay. So it's a lot of just very community like support right now. I think down the road, as I move through my own ambition recovery, to your point earlier, like I think we teach what we most need to learn. And so for me, I learn best by teaching. So I'm still in it very early on. And so I think as I go through my journey, I'll be able to then say, okay, so the first year when I was starting to read all of these books around burnout and ambition and things like that, like, here's what really helped me. And I imagine my nature is to create content in terms of workshops and courses and things like that. So I know that eventually there will be a course, I'm sure. There will be groups, there will be accountability buddies, things like that. But for now, we're all just sort of like finding our way into this nest where we can rest and say, me too, you too. Oh, yeah. So a lot of it right now is very much like light, casual engagement. People will pop in once a week and catch up on all the posts, throw some things up, and then come back next week when they have time. So I'm not using any of my own strategies that I help my hosts with because I don't want to put pressure on my members to do anything. They have enough pressure externally. I want this to be a safe place that they know they can come when they have the capacity and when they're in the mood to engage.
Yes. Well, I think it's also quite beautiful because you're basically practicing what you preach, right? There's no pressure. There's no expectation that you've basically waited to put this absolutely perfect community product out there, right? You've just taken the pressure off and allowed yourself just to start, which is probably the most beautiful piece about it because there's no pressure to get to an endpoint that a product needs to be created.
I'm not trying to scale it, market it, all those things. I'm like, it's here if you want it.
And the pressure is off to just be and to be a part of it and to find people in similar life stages. So we'll definitely link to that. So let's make sure we get that on there in the show notes. So for anybody listening and they want to find a safe place to just be and find comfort in hearing very similar wins and stories and challenges, that they can take a look at that and see if that's a place for them.
Yeah, it's ambitionrecovery.com and you can learn all about it. But yeah, we're here when you need us, want us. We'll be here. It is a very interesting case study for me in my ambition recovery because the old me would not have released something until there was a full and complete plan and strategy. And this me is like, I need this now and I want this now. So it'll just continue to evolve. It's $10 a month to join, which is really just a commitment to ourselves that we're going to show up at least at some point. And it's meant to just be a healing place. And one day, if it's something else, then cool. If not, okay. My livelihood is not dependent upon it, which is a nice place to be for the first time in a long time.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Congratulations, because I think I'm striving to find that place and get there.
Yeah, it's a constant work in progress, but going back in-house at Mighty Networks was the ticket to freedom I needed because I can do my job really well. I love my job. I love the people I work with. I love the company, and it frees up mental space for me in the off hours that I did not have before.
Yeah. I mean, there's something to be said for stillness and taking action to create stillness because we got to prioritize ourselves. And if we don't, we start to burn and then crumble. And
it's really hard to come back from that place. It's much easier to nurture yourself along the way, keep yourself from totally crumbling. When you burn out, which I've definitely done multiple times, it's such a longer process to get back to a place of wholeness, if you ever do, and it usually requires a health emergency or a breakdown where you're forced to do it. And there's such a different vibe being forced to recover versus choosing that path. And it saves yourself a lot of emotional and physical heartache in the process. So if that's one thing I've taken away from the last few years, it's that I don't want to get to a place where I'm forced to fix things that are very broken. I want to proactively treat parts of my life as if they matter, because they do.
Yeah, it is quite prevalent, that narrative, I think, of having to give ourselves self-care while we're in these moments of stress. And it's so impactful to think that if we can give ourselves permission to just take care of ourselves before we hit that moment of stress, or before we crumble, before we burn, the possibilities are endless, right? Our opportunities are there. And I won't get into this now, but I feel like that is my largest gripe with self-care, the self-care industry. It's usually being promoted in terms of how to calm yourself down from stress, or like, but I don't want to be stressed. So
how
do I like give myself love before stress?
Yeah. And I mean, that comes
How do we
down to
avoid
that
that?
stillness. To me, that is the ultimate self-care. And self-care has been billed as a commodity, as getting your nails done. I tell my husband, he's like, go get your nails done, relax. And I'm like, that's actually kind of a chore. Like I like to do it because it makes me feel pulled together. That's like one small thing that I do that makes me feel like, okay, my life is not fully off the rails. How can somebody with their nails done have a life off the rails? It's not possible, right? And that's just like a mental thing for me, but it's another to do. It's a chore. It's not actually a relaxing, enjoyable experience for anybody that does it. So it's even been recognizing what things I used to consider self-care that are actually not. That's like taking care of yourself, but it's not self-care. And so I think now, like, well, what is self-care to me? It is often going on a long walk, listening to a podcast or audiobook, or it's having the ability to literally play a mindless game on my phone and just rest at the end of the day. It's, this is a dumb one that I heard Tracy Ellis Ross say once, that it's peeing when you have to pee. That sounds so dumb. But how many of us literally are like, I'll go pee in a second. I have to finish this thing. And then you end up having to pee. It's like, no, stop. Listen to your body enough to literally drink water when you're thirsty. Go pee when you have to pee. Sit down when your feet hurt. Like, it's literally basic human needs that we brush off as unnecessary and unimportant. And then when things go sideways, we're like, oh gosh, what happened? Well, we weren't looking at any of the warning lights.
Yeah. Well, that's it, right? It's like, are we in touch enough with our bodies to recognize these basic human needs until it's too late? And you're like, I'm sufficiently dehydrated, or I haven't drank water. I've only had coffee in the last 12 hours.
Yeah.
Or
have I fed myself something actually nutritious, or have I just shoved things in my mouth because it was there? Like, we need to treat ourselves like our favorite child, and it's true. It's like, would we ever neglect our kids the way that we neglect ourselves? My God, no. Would we neglect our friends the way we neglect ourselves? Absolutely not. And it's little things. It's stretching. Like, when's the last time you sat down on the floor and touched your toes and like did a twist and whatever? Like, it is little tiny cost effective, AKA free things that you can do that tell your body you're paying attention to her and you haven't ignored her and left her. Like, we live so in our heads that we forget to get back in our bodies and think like, how do I even feel right now? And we often only notice things, our bodies, when they're not working properly. And then we get frustrated. It's like, but you didn't appreciate it when you didn't have any pain in your knee, or you didn't have a backache. Like, you just totally missed that. And so, yeah, checking in is just, I think I've realized, like, the top thing I have to do, especially when I have no time to do it.
Yeah. And quite gratefully, right, when we think about it, checking in with our body takes a fraction of a minute, right? We can take a quick minute, just check in with ourselves, and it's free, right? It is not that much of a commitment. And can we appreciate the fact that we're still standing? Because sometimes at the end of the day, I don't feel like I should still be standing.
You know what's funny about that? I find myself getting distracted on my phone where I'm leaning against the kitchen counter, and I'll realize I've been standing there for like 45 minutes scrolling. And I'm like, at least scroll sitting, you dummy. Like, sit down.
Yeah.
Sit down.
Yeah.
Or lay on the floor, lay on your backyard. Like, just get out of these habitual, bad habits that we have, because we're like, oh, I need to stand here because I'm actually waiting for this water to boil, or I'm waiting for this. Like, at least relax all the way. don't just do it halfway. Like, give yourself that space to fully embrace whatever it is that you're doing. And I try and catch myself as often as possible where I'm like, how can I make this situation feel better for me? How can I make this more pleasurable? Like, what would make this feel more enjoyable? And that can even be something silly, like not just eating out of a to-go container, but like plating it, making it look nice, because it does make a difference. Setting the scene for ourselves, setting the vibe, like it puts us in a different physical and headspace when we take time to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's beautiful. And such a great reminder to all of us to do just that. And for me, that's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to clean off my kitchen table, not just a corner of it when I want to eat lunch. Not just push it all to the back. Actually, maybe take an extra minute and clean it off.
Or, at least stick it in a box and shove it underneath the table. Save that for another day, right? Like,
if you
even
can't
that.
See it, it's not a problem.
Sometimes that's the way you do it. Sometimes you're like, you know what? Out of sight, out of mind. I will get to this when I have the energetic capacity, but I'm priority right now. Yeah, I'm priority.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. We're going to wrap it up here. I just want to toss it back to you really quick. Where can our listeners find you? Just a quick rundown of where women or men, I keep limiting it, where anyone can find you who's listening and they want to engage with you a little bit more.
You can find me on all the socials at Baily Hancock, and it's Baily with no E. So I have very good SEO. If you search for me, I will come up on the first 10 pages. But yeah, Baily Hancock on Instagram, LinkedIn. Those are my main two places that I hang out. And you can always go to bailyhancock.com, but ambitionrecovery.com will actually get you there anyway. So that's the best bet. You can find all my things there. And please reach out. If you hear this and you want to be friends, I consider myself a professional friend maker. So I would love to add you to my community.
Yay. I love that. I love that. Well, thank you so much for being here. And for those listening, if you're interested in learning more about Baily or becoming her friend, please reach out, check for links. We'll have them in our show notes, and stay tuned.
Thank you so much.
Yay. Glad you were here. Thanks so much for listening to today's episode. If you liked what you heard, please help us out and leave a review wherever you listen, and consider sharing with your friends. If you're interested in learning a bit more about the project or want to share your story, please visit our website linked in our show notes below.